Monahan, joined by our very special guest, Michaela Vandermost, the founder and executive creative director of Newfangled Studios, which is an advertising agency that is partnered with big name brands such as Google, YouTube, and Staples. Michaela, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Now, starting off with your journey, tell us how you got into the passion of making videos.
Well, I've always been interested in storytelling. So when I was little, I would write, draw, and always wanted to do something creative. When I went into high school, you had to choose a track, and I chose the track actually of art and illustration. But I had a teacher who made it really clear that I wasn't great at it, to be honest. And so I went to my guidance counselor, and I said, I don't feel like I'm good at this. I have to just change my track. And she said, well, the only thing that's open is video production. And I was like, whatever, just give me something else. So I signed up for video thinking it was just going to be another class in school, and actually it changed the entire trajectory of my life, and I fell in love with it.
Fantastic. Now, following your track change from art to video, explain how your friends and family felt about that once you really started to show a passion for that.
Yeah, I mean, the people around me have had a tremendous impact on my success. So when I was young, my neighborhood friends would come over and I would write, a script and they would act it out. And I had my dad's video camcorder and we would film things. My mom would make elaborate props for my films. She one time turned a golf cart into like a covered wagon for like a Western movie that I was trying to make with the neighborhood kids. My dad would do the sound effects by we used to drive a big Suburban, and he would tape sound effects and then crank the speakers of the Suburban and drive them up onto where our set was so that it sounded like sound effects. And my parents would give me like VCRs and I'd connect them together in order, because this was way before like computer editing. So I would edit using 2 VCRs. So the people around me, I think, were excited that I found my passion, and would support me and also sort of like join in on it.
Now, following your very obvious love of making these videos, when did you really start to decide to make a business out of this, and what was that like?
So my parents actually had a business when I was growing up, and sort of like a core value of our family was to blaze your own trail. It was never like a follow the path kind of a way of growing up. So my parents had a business. It never even felt like an option to not have a business. I always knew that I was going to start a business. And then once I found my love for video and advertising, honestly, that too, I knew by the time I was like 14, I knew that that's what I was going to do. And so I tried a couple of things that failed miserably first. First, I tried to like start filming bands and getting bands to pay me for music videos, and as it turns out, like local bands don't have any money. And then I started trying to do like local commercials, and it wasn't taking off. And then I thought, I really probably need to go work for someone else and figure out how successful companies work before trying to start. So I went and worked for a couple of companies that were very successful and did really cool work for big name brands, learned the ropes, and then tried again, and on that attempt it worked.
Now, after the rising success of Newfangled Studios, you obviously do film advertisements, and obviously with advertisements have to have people. And from that, how does the hiring process go for when it goes from or you can compare the difference between hiring a adult actor or hiring a child actor for one of your commercials?
Okay, cool. So we call that casting. And the way that works is the creative team will put out specs. So we'll say, okay, we've written this script, we've drawn these storyboards, and for this concept, we need blank. We need a 7th grade person who fits this criteria. Then those are called casting specs. Then we'll work with a casting agent who has connections with all the modeling agencies around town. We'll give them the specs, and we'll typically give like a sample scene. We'll say, okay, read this scene and film yourself. It used to be, before COVID, it used to be that we'd go into a casting studio and we'd sit there all day and people would perform and we'd go next, you know. But since COVID, it's changed and it's all self-tape. So people film the scene, send it in, and then the director will get, I mean, we might get 100 submissions if we have one role, right? The director will go through and start to pare down and bring it down and say, okay, I think these 6 people are the best bet. And then they'll do what's called a callback. So we'll say, okay, 6 people, we think you're wonderful. We're going to give you another scene. We're going to give you something else to work on, or we're going to give you some feedback. Like, that was really good, but you were doing this weird thing with your face. Like, do, you know, like, we'll just explain to them what needed to be better. They'll resubmit, and then on that resubmit, we will give it to our client and say, okay, this is who we think it should be, and then maybe here's a few backups in case you don't agree. And that's the process.
Now, in case anyone is interested in getting into casting, how does somebody know if a casting agency is trustworthy or not? Because there have been a few instances that people have heard of people who just try to scam people out of their money, which is truly awful.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of experience on that side of the business, but what I can tell you is that there's a couple, you know, in the Boston area, there's like 3 or 4 really reputable casting agencies, and then there's also modeling agencies, and the two work together. So I would go to their website and make sure that they have cast for large brand names. I would go to the website and make sure that they have hundreds and hundreds of models, and maybe just talk to some other people that are on their roster to make sure that it's legit. But there are a lot of really small scammy ones. And then there's a few, and I think it'll be clear once you look at the small scammy ones versus the more prominent ones in town, who the legit players are.
Now, as you can see here, we have a wonderful cast of people with us today. And you can see that we have three major cameras and these lights. How might you compare your set, which has a much bigger budget than ours, to hours that we have today?
Sure. So, I mean, budget aside, the type of work that you're doing would be called ENG, like electronic news gathering. So it's more like news style, where you might have multiple cameras and you're doing a show. The type of work that I do is more scripted, where we're setting up scenes, we're lighting for a scene, shooting the scene, and then setting up again. So we do single camera production. So my sets would typically be either in a studio if it was like a green screen piece, but more often than not, it's at a location. So it could be someone's home, it could be a restaurant, it just whatever the scene calls for in our script. And then we light that one scene. It's typically 3-point lighting, that probably similar to what you guys are doing here. And then we have one cinema camera. And we wouldn't, even if you need multiple angles of the scene, we'd shoot it wide, then we'd shoot it medium, then we'd shoot it close, versus shooting it all 3 cameras at once. But what you guys have here seems like a pretty legit news setup, like what you would see if you went to like Channel 5 or any news station.
Thank you. Now, in your set, describe how a day might go. But before we do that, can we please pull up the video, please? And if you would look back here, please. We have a wonderful video of your daughter Blake and niece Faye. Now, this is footage of the Staples shoot for the Forward to School campaign this past June.
Notebook, markers, forward to school, markers, listen, forward to school.
So can you please describe what was going on in that video in depth?
Okay, so this past year for a Staples Back to School campaign, we had to deliver a lot of assets. So we had to deliver for, your typical 15-second, 30-second spots, but also Snapchat ads, TikTok ads, Facebook still frames, banner ads, like all the different things. So we were shooting elements for that campaign, and a good way to do that is on a green screen because you can change what the background looks like. So in this particular video, we were trying to create like a trending sound on TikTok by doing this custom song, having them do a dance to it, and then having multiple people do that dance to seed it on TikTok so that ultimately it would catch on. And from a technical perspective, we had a green screen set up. We had a single camera. I don't know that you could see it there, but it was on a boom, so on a big jib, and that way it could move up and down with the actors, left to right with the actors. And the whole thing was on a DMX lighting system, so a lighting grid similar to what you have here, except you could push buttons for the different lighting setups. So we would pre-program it and say, okay, for this setup, you just have to hit this button and all the right lights are going to come on. So we did that the day prior in the studio.
Now, when you say custom sound, I remember that on our way to the shoot, we managed to find a sound on TikTok that was listing off basic school necessities. And you decided, hey, why can't we turn this into like a school campaign sound? So you got one of your employees to make a custom sound for that. And do you have like any idea for people who might want to get into like SoundCloud music or like being a like Spotify artist, how you might have done that?
That's not so much my area of expertise. There's a particular guy on my team who is really good at that. But no, I actually don't know that I have advice for becoming a SoundCloud artist.
And back to the social media with how you wanted to start a trend and stuff. Describe how editing a big commercial like this, which has a large budget, might go with a TikTok that a person could just make for free on their phone with maybe iMovie as an editor.
Sure. So a lot of when we say it's a big budget, a lot of it is because every little detail of it is planned, approved by multiple layers of people who have a lot of opinions, and then altered, and that each person who works on it is an expert in that one piece. So from the script writing to the storyboarding, every little article of clothing that the people are wearing, it's all custom and it's all pre-approved. So that's honestly where the money goes to. I mean, there's equipment and there's rentals and things like that, but honestly the money goes to the level of detail and planning that goes into it, versus if you were to just make this thing. I mean, you could pop up a green screen in your living room and light it and do the exact same thing, and probably you could make comparable quality. So that's the biggest difference, is that in client work, it's not just about making it. That's one piece of it, and honestly, that's sometimes the smallest piece. The biggest piece is like the idea behind it, getting it all approved, getting all the dozens of people, on the client side and on the agency side aligned. And so, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest difference between just making something yourself and doing it professionally.
And speaking which of professional and stuff, just quick question that some people might have in case they want to do more advanced effects. What editing softwares people use for commercials to as big of a extent as this?
Sure. So we use, so from the full pipeline, we would design the initial frames in Illustrator. People hand draw it in Illustrator and shade it. Graphics will be designed in Photoshop. And then they're animated in Adobe After Effects. If there's 3D, we would use Cinema 4D for that. And then the editing is done in Adobe Premiere.
Now, when making and finishing your first, attempt at a commercial, describe how the experience is when you're handing it to your client and how they might give feedback or approve the video for release to the public.
Sure. So when we give the first pass, we call that the rough cut. There's usually nothing that rough about it. You want it to be pretty polished when you give it to the client. So we'll hand that over, and emotionally you go through your own roller coaster because you so badly want their approval. No one is ever going to approve a V1. Like, it just doesn't happen. So they'll come back. They'll probably show it to other people on their side. They'll have meetings without you there to talk about it. They'll write down all their notes and give it to a producer on my side. The producer then will talk to the creatives and say, okay, here's what needs to change about it. We'll change it. We'll hand them, now that's rough cut 2. A typical process goes to rough cut 3 or 4 before approval.
Now, how did your reputation go from filming small, maybe like videos from, like what were some like your first clients to the big name brands such as you can see right here, Google, YouTube Staples, and Bank of America?
I wish that I had, a lot of people ask me this, and I don't have a silver bullet answer. It's not really one thing. The best explanation I can give is that I made it my entire personality for over a decade. It's all I did. It's all I thought about. I was working 24 hours a day, and not because I was like felt I had to, but I was obsessed with it. And so when you do that, you meet a lot of people, and your name just sort of starts to spread, and you do it for long enough that you start to get smaller opportunities with those brands. So those brands, started saying like, hey, we have this like smaller video project, or we need like a training video, or things that were less exciting, but they were still the big name brands. And then you start to show them slowly what you can do, and then you eventually work your way up to the big campaigns.
Yeah, prove yourself.
Yeah, it just took a long time.
Now, tell us, are there any companies you hope to work with in the future, and why?
I would really like to work with more companies that are doing good in the world. I have a lot of pride in the clients that I work with, but currently we don't have any sort of like medical clients. And there's one company in the Seaport, it's called Vertex. And Vertex is working on a cure for diabetes. And I think that's so cool, and I'd like to be a part of it. So it's been sort of like on my list to try to start to reach out to that company. Because when you do advertising for a company, you're really helping them achieve their mission, and I just think that would be a cool one.
Tell us, what are some of your number one priorities when filming on your sets? Whether that be in the studio with the big green screen, or that be in a space that you don't have ownership over?
Sure. Well, from like a big picture perspective, one of my number one priorities when putting anything out is to be representative of the audiences that we're serving. So you'll notice that if you go on my website, you'll notice that any of the ads that I put out are very diverse, not just in terms of gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, religion, but also like, it could be more subtle cues like, socioeconomic status, area in which they come from. But I'm a huge believer in you have to see it in order to be it. And if you can use whatever superpower you have in life, and for me, it's having the ability to put advertising on the screen that people are going to see to help people feel included, that would be my biggest, my biggest priority is making sure that the work is good, it's high quality, but also that there's a level of inclusion that's going to push the industry forward. But I think you're probably asking more about the technical side of it, yeah? I think the biggest thing is just making your day, which is making your schedule. Our shoots are very ambitious. We'll usually plan for more shots than is humanly possible to get, and we can't leave until we've got it. Sometimes you're fighting the sun, right? So yesterday I did a production, and the sun was going to go down by 4 o'clock. We weren't done filming, but if the sun went down, we were out of light. So sometimes it's just like tactical. You have a certain amount of shots to get. You don't want to move on until you like what you've shot, but sometimes you have to just know when to move on. So that's the biggest thing that I try to make sure I do is actually just get the shots that I planned out to get.
I can relate to the whole lighting issue because I know sometimes when using the chroma key tool for a editing software such as CapCut, for example, or VN, which are some mobile editing softwares that people use for like maybe TikTok videos or just little sketches they like to do, because I am a big fan of sketches. I've always liked Saturday Night Live. But yeah, I can relate to that. And my last question for you today is, can you tell us, are there any tips into getting into this profession that you can give perhaps maybe our cast today or just anybody watching?
I think it's really an industry that you have to have a passion for. It's not the kind of thing where you just learn it and you show up and do your job. You won't succeed, because you have to really want to do a good job, and there's not, it's not black and white in terms of what good is. So you have to be really invested. So I'd say number one, if you are going to try to get into this industry, make sure that you really want it, because you have to work really hard to break in. But if you do decide that you really want it, just make work. The best camera is the camera that's in your pocket. If you're making things and being creative every day, it will build upon itself. So don't feel like, oh, I can't until I have money for all these lights and all this camera and stuff like that.
Work with what you got.
Work
Put your
with what
stuff
you
out
got.
there. It's not
Yeah.
about the quality of your perhaps visuals or audio. It's the quality of like your script and your writing. And I can
Exactly.
say that my teacher, Mr. McDonough, has even said that it might not be a good idea to go to college for this stuff, because once you learn all the technology, it's going to get outdated. You want to learn how to write a good script, and you want to learn how to make people feel that emotion you're trying to get them to feel, whether that be joy or sadness or laughter. But thank you, Michaela, for coming out today to tell us what it's like to be a successful entrepreneur such as yourself, and working with these very well-known brands, which is very impressive, and I'm very proud to call you my aunt. For CCTV, I am Declan Monahan, and thank you for watching.
Now it's time for Word of the Week.
Order in the court. We're here today for the case of Catherine Poole v. Martha Thibodeau and the cold-blooded murder of Bull the Bulldog from the CCTV Dog Pound. Now let's take a look at the evidence. Looks like Katie is guilty. In the name of the court, Catherine, you've been prosecuted. Prosecute means to bring criminal action to someone.
This program is brought to you by Canton Community Television. Now, from the television studios of Canton High School.
Welcome to the Dog Pound. I'm your host, Colin Davis, here with Huck McCready, your new golf captain. Today, Huck is going to tell us a little bit about the highly competitive golf team we have here at Canton High School. Welcome to our show, Huck.
Thank you, Colin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Got a couple questions for you today. We'll start it off. Describe some of the highlights and lowlights of the golf season this year.
A few of the highlights is the bus rides back from the away matches. We have a lot of fun bus rides back with certain people on the golf team. A few lowlights are us losing a decent amount of matches. It's all good though.
It happens. Who were some of the people on the bus that got excited?
Junior, very funny kid, Danny Hall.
Danny Hall, yeah.
Matt Anderson as well.
Yep.
Brian Middleton, as you probably know through hockey. And Brendan Torgy, probably. So,
Tell us a little bit about your pre-match routine.
my pre-match routine is show up to the course. We usually go on our first hole at 3 o'clock, usually get there at 2:40, 2:45, take probably 2 putts, and then just kind of hang out until it's my time to go off.
Explain how you became interested in golf.
I became interested in golf when my dad told me about it one day, and then I would go mini golfing and have fun doing the real course.
How old would you say you were when this happened?
I'd say a solid 5.
Solid.
No, probably 7 actually.
7, actually.
Yeah.
What is your favorite golf club to use?
Favorite golf club is definitely the driver.
The driver. What brand?
Probably a Callaway.
Callaway.
Yeah, it's
How much do those things cost?
depends. Mine isn't too expensive, but
That's
some of
good.
them can
Safe.
get up like $500, $600.
Yeah. What type of tournaments do you play outside of the high school golf season?
I was playing a few local tournaments here around in the summer. I also play a lot with my friends and my family in the summer to have fun.
How would you say how different they are from the high school season? Those tournaments.
It's definitely less serious. You don't have to. There's not as much pressure. Also, it's more fun. Just playing with your friends, messing around, have a much more fun time.
Tell us about the CHS match medals record you're tied for.
It's a great honor. I'm happy to be on the same category as some of the great golfers of Canton High. It's been a good honor, and I'm just happy about it.
For those who don't know about the match medals record, can you explain it a little bit, what it means?
It's the match medalist record is when at the end of the match, whoever has the best score gets the match medalist. It's like the best score, you could say.
Compare your favorite golf course to your home golf course for Canton High School.
My favorite golf course is probably the home golf course for Canton High. So I get to play it a lot before the season, and yeah, it's a good advantage. A ton of the other kids have that advantage as well too.
What's your favorite attributes about the course?
Favorite attributes is probably how short the course is.
Short,
Yeah, you can hit the ball far there.
Do you have any interest in playing college golf?
I haven't really thought about it much, but we'll see what it brings me.
Sounds good. What are some of the colleges that you'd like to attend maybe for golf?
I haven't thought about it at all,
Thought about that?
to be honest.
Explain some of the core values of the Canton golf team.
If you don't mind me asking, what's a core value?
Things you take very seriously, set of rules.
Yeah, big rule is always have respect for your teammates and always respect people around you. Another rule is to have fun, responsibly, of course.
Yeah.
Don't yell on the course. It's not very against the rules. It's not something we do there.
Yeah.
We're a very classy team. Have a lot of class in that team, pride.
Yeah.
Yep.
So last year you were a freshman on the golf team. Compare it a little bit this year to last year.
I think last year there was less pressure because I wasn't playing as much, and I was more towards the bottom of the team. This year it changed up a little. We had a lot of great seniors last year who left, so everybody kind of moved up in the lineup.
Who were some of the great players on the team last year?
The great players last year were Mike Leonetti, Connor Hunter, Will Jefftis, Charlie Cohn, Michaela Costello.
Describe what it means to be named a junior captain for the 2023-24 season.
It's a good honor. I'd love to lead those group of men to a lot of wins this year. Me and my co-captain, Brendan Torgy, are already thinking about it, what plays we're going to drop for next year to win the matches. Yeah,
When did you find out that you were going to be a captain?
found out about 2 weeks ago. We voted at our banquet probably a week prior, and then we found out.
It's pretty interesting. Tell us about some of your hopes for the next year.
Some of our hopes for next year is to make it the states as a team, state sectionals as a team. Something we could not accomplish this year. But I think next year we have a very young team with a lot of potential upside. So I'm looking forward to it.
How much would you say you golf, a year?
A year. I probably couldn't count that many times, but in July I play a lot. August, some decent amount still, but mostly July.
Do you like to play with your friends, or you play with some of the kids on the golf team? Keep it serious.
Usually in the summer I play with my friends, and here and there I'd play with a few of the kids in the golf team, but it's not as serious in the summer. Yeah.
Who are some of the boys you play with in the summer?
In the summer, I play with a kid named Eden Murphy, a kid Colin Davis, our host right here. Teddy Schumann, freshman actually on the golf team I play with a lot. Bobby Budway, also on the golf team, and Danny Hall. And Brendan Torgy and Brian Middleton on the golf team.
Let's see. I forgot what I was going to say. How old were you when you first picked up a golf club?
As I said before, probably about 7 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Starting that early is a great thing to do. You start, learn the game, and learn the rules early.
So for practices, who do you usually golf with? You golf in threesomes, foursomes?
Usually 3 or 4.
3 or 4.
I've kind of played with a mix of everyone. But, yeah, it's probably about right.
Who's the favorite person to play with?
Favorite person to play with is probably a kid, as I mentioned before, Danny Hall Jr., just a great overall kid, a great athlete,
Yeah.
great personality. He's fun to hang out with.
Thank you, Huck McCready, for being on the show today. We wish you luck for next year as the captain of the golf team. For Canton Community Television, I'm Colin Davis. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
This has been an F Block production. Joe Blizzard, Viola Bonwell, Kevin Brophy, David Carlson, Anthony Delezio, Liam Doherty, John Feeney, Tyler Finland, Tyler Kelly, Andrew Kerchak, Lance Marcellin, Brandon Marshall, Carlos Mendez, Carolyn Chiavo, Madeline Smith, James Young. Brought to you by the student station on Canton Community Television.